So hi everybody, I'm Aileen Murphy. Can you hear me all right? Is that okay? So I'm
That's
Aileen
perfect,
Murphy.
Aileen.
All right,
Yep.
Thanks, Joanna. So
Yeah,
I'm
we can
Aileen.
hear you.
Thank you. I'm Aileen Murphy. I'm the Safe and Together Coordinator for North Lanarkshire Council. So I came into this post in February earlier this year, and I've been coordinating the rollout of the implementation of Safe and Together across North Lanarkshire with support from the steering group and the Safe and Together champions. So myself and Anne, who's here as well, who'll talk to you in a wee minute, and also Shauna from Gender Based Violence Service, we're also certified Safe and Together trainers. So Anne and Shauna are also involved in supporting the rollout and the implementation of the model across North Lanarkshire. So over the last 9 months, we've offered core and overview trainings as well as 1 hour briefings to the multi-agency professionals who you can see that I've listed here on the slide. So it's been really kind of widespread training that's been delivered over the last 9 months. But it's been a real benefit to the implementation of the model that there's so many agencies that have been involved in the uptake of the training. This has really promoted a shared language and a shared approach across the authority. And some recent progress that we've made that I think will be a real benefit is that we've arranged to meet with the children's panel members to deliver a 1 hour briefing, and hopefully that will, move on to them being able to attend further training as well. So I think this is a really positive move, as it will give panel members a clearer understanding of the framework that the assessments and recommendations that they're being presented with are being based on. And this will then lead to more domestic abuse informed decision making within the children's hearing system and will lead to better outcomes for children. And you can see that the children's reporters administration are also going to be involved in the training, the core training from 2023. So as I've said, it's really a benefit that these agencies are all, getting involved in the uptake of training that's been offered. So although we've been delivering a really busy training programme over the last 9 months, it's been recognised that training on its own isn't enough to fully implement the framework and to deliver the shift in practice that we're aiming for. So we have offered further implementation support throughout North Lanarkshire. So we've been offering opportunity for everybody who's been trained in the model to attend practitioner forums. So this is an opportunity for everybody to meet up and to, we can include further learning and development opportunities within a multi-agency setting. And it gives us an opportunity to discuss any challenges or things that are going well within the implementation. We also offer Safe and Together consultations. So this is an opportunity for frontline practitioners to meet with the Safe and Together champions to look at their case through a Safe and Together lens. So within the consultation, we'll be able to look at the information that's been gathered, see if there's any information that we still have to kind of gather for that case example. We look at the impact on the children. We can use the mapping tool to complete, documentation. We can complete the mapping tool in identifying the survivor strengths and the perpetrator's pattern of behaviour. And this is supporting workers together, I suppose, to create a more holistic assessment in a domestic abuse informed way. We've also been holding kind of mini focus workshops. So the workshops we hold are every 3 weeks, where it's a workshop that people can drop into. So workers can drop into this because the workshops are focused on a key area of the Safe and Together model. So one session we might focus on engaging with perpetrators, and then the next session we might focus on partnering with survivors, and workers can pop into whatever session they feel that they would like some extra support with. And within the focused workshops, we're looking at the resources and tools that the Safe and Together Institute offer for that particular area. And it gives staff an opportunity to share experiences of what they've been doing, what works well, or any support that they might need. And as I've mentioned, we've got the champions within North Lanarkshire. So we have champions within each social work and health locality office, and we also have champions in education. And they're there to support their teams and support the facilitation of the forums, consultations and workshops. So there is a lot going on, but I suppose there is still a lot to do as well. So we did have the opportunity with support from Kirsty and Joanna to carry out a baseline evaluation back in May. And this identified kind of gaps and areas for improvement within our organisation. So we plan that the plan is that we will carry out that survey again at a later date, and this will help us to measure the change that the implementation and the training has had, and any progress that's been made or any barriers to change. So the main challenges that we've experienced, I would say, is in relation to organisational demand on services, and this seems to be across agencies, where at times it's been maybe an issue for staff to be released to attend the training because of the demand and pressures on the organisation. And as well as training, another challenge I would say is the time. So time for the Safe and Together champions and staff who've been trained to attend the forums and attend, these opportunities that will allow them to continue their learning and implement their model into practice. So I suppose that's always going to be a challenge for staff who've got busy workloads already, is to putting time aside to attend these other forums. So I would say it's been particularly a challenge for the Safe and Together champions, who are supporting other staff within their teams and are helping to support and facilitate workshops and consultations, because the tasks that we're asking them to do is on top of their already really busy workloads. So it means we're relying heavily on staff commitment to drive the implementation and to embed these changes into practice. But since coming into post, I've had some really good opportunities to meet with other Safe and Together leads and trainers through the national, the Safe and Together forum that's been running, and other forums that I've attended. So it's been really good to hear what's working well in other areas and get tips and advice from other Safe and Together implementation leads that are maybe at a different stage. So that's been really helpful. But I'll just pass you on to Anne now, and Anne will be able to give you a wee update from her experience in North Lanarkshire.
Thanks, Elaine. Hi, I'm Anne Trevorrow. I'm a senior educational psychologist in North Lanarkshire Council, working for the Educational Psychology Service. And I'm one of probably about 2 or 3 education reps on the Safe and Together steering group. I've been involved for a number of years now, and one of the things about the model that really I've taken away is just how well it sits within a practice implementation framework, because actually it targets so many things in terms of what we need in child protection. I have a senior child protection lead in our service, and that's how most of my work with the Safe and Together model has been undertaken. And I feel very fortunate, because it's given me a lot of multi-agency connections with other agencies, third sector agencies as well, and it's also given me the chance to do some really innovative practice as well. So I'm just going to outline from an education point of view, which is maybe slightly different because we're a universal service, slightly different from the more specific aspects of a targeted service like social work or some of the gender-based violence projects that we've got out there. The key things that the Safe and Together framework are offering us is it's fundamentally about keeping children safe. So it sits within our Getting It Right for Every Child frameworks, and it also sits within our child protection, care and welfare policies as an education department. The language that we use around people generally, never mind just when there's domestic violence, but the language that we use and the narratives we create are very important in education, because they carry quite a lot of influence and strength across children's lives. And so what has been really helpful from this is the shift in thinking about how we talk about domestic abuse and how we actually understand what we can do to support families and children in those situations. And for me, one of the key things about the Safe and Together approach was it made me feel like there were things that I could be doing on the ground, and I didn't feel quite so disabled by the whole mention of a violent man in a household and the impact that was having around the children and families. It also made me feel like I was joining some of the dots in terms of ensuring that the work of the non-offending parent, which is usually a woman and the mum, was actually being recognised in that in that way and not being seen as contributing to the lack of safety around the children. So the partnering, identifying and recording protective actions of women is a really key shift and change for us in how we record things in education. The mapping of the coercive controlling behaviours of the perpetrator and the impact that has on family functioning in terms of a method of gathering information has been crucial. And Aileen and I have been involved in the, like she was saying, in the consultations, the casework consultations, and the difference that makes for practitioners on the ground in terms of them moving forward with some of the complexities of these cases has been really helpful. It's really clarified where the perpetration and the harm to the family functioning is coming from, and it's made it very clear in terms of who is responsible for disturbing or upsetting the family functioning. So I think that process, which is becoming much more part of my practice generally, does make such a difference to how we view the situation. The challenging of the gender double standards for parents is an ongoing issue for me, and tends to be a theme that comes up a lot. And my teaching colleagues now will say, I know what you're going to say, Anne, I know what you're going to say. Where's Dad? What does Dad do? I says, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to say, because actually, where is he and what's his role in this family and how does he work? Because we do not have the information around dads and their parenting. And if we do have information around dads, it tends to be very what's their criminal activity like, or whether they're divorced or in, oh, he's in jail, they've got nothing to do with the family now. Oh yes, but if he's in jail, he can still have communication with the family, and we know that coercive control doesn't stop because men are in jail and the families are outside. In fact, we were working with a case recently, and in actual fact, the coercive control increased when the man was incarcerated because he didn't have anything else to do with his time but stalk his partner and the children. So yeah, so those types of conversations, my colleagues across my establishments are getting quite used to me saying, oh yeah. So I'm now finding that I have a lot more dads coming to meetings than I used to have, which I don't know if that's a win for me or if it's just because people are generally asking fathers to come in more. But I'm taking it as a reflection of the fact that I always ask about dad, so they've just decided to get dad to come in and talk directly with me instead of giving me it third hand. And that, going on to that bit about making the invisible visible and bringing dads into the room, even when dad's not present, even if dad has not been involved, even if dad has not had a contribution to make, and if he is making a contribution, if it's a distant negative contribution or has been in the past, and is encouraging people to see the impact that would have had on family functioning across time and for our children. The harm to our children is ongoing. It's not about children witnessing, it's about children experiencing. And when they experience trauma, there is impact for them and for the survivor, because you can't parent if you're in a state of terror all the time. And that kind of covers the bit that I'm interested in as a senior educational psychologist, which is the impact of trauma and the impact of developmental trauma on children and families generally, and how we recover them from that. And one of the things about domestic abuse, which has always been a real difficulty for me, has been the ongoing trauma that would be brought into the household by someone who is a perpetrator of domestic violence. So the domestic informed approach really helps with that. So yeah, so I'm quite a loud voice, but there's not many voices in education at the moment, but I keep chipping away at it. And I think what we're looking at is part of the training team, taking forward training to education professionals that feels relevant and appropriate for them, and gauging it at a level where they can see how they can implement it, because it's not the same as a targeted service, and it's much more normative. Our nursery establishments in particular are very well positioned because they have lots of contact with both parents usually and extended family members. A lot more so than our schools, because once the children go to school, that kind of drops off a wee bit. So there's real potential for us to help to implement Safe and Together at different levels across the authority. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things, because I sit on the fostering adoption panel in North Lanarkshire, and I also sit in the kinship panel in North Lanarkshire. And the panel members in both of those panels are really quite, no, they're not really. I was going to say they're quite fed up of me being on the panels with them, because every single bit of paperwork that comes their way, I'm like, so where is Safe and Together in this bit of paperwork? I'm not seeing the translation of Safe and Together principles into this paperwork. If they're victim blaming, then they're not doing what Safe and Together says, which is the default position is to partner with the survivor and to look at strengths and competences and record the protective actions of women. Over and over again, we see women who have been care experienced children who have been come into, quite often quite young, coming into abusive relationships. They are held responsible for the impact that the abuse that the men visit on them and their children over and over again. And so that's an area where the interagency work with social work and other people within the fostering adoption and kinship care context is really challenging, but also very innovative, because we're beginning to say, well, we need to see some changes in how things are recorded. You can't, if a man is in custody for 38 violent assaults, then he has some impact on the family functioning and can't just be said he's incarcerated so he doesn't have any impact. So those are the types of discussions that have come up in some of the work I've been doing, and making a difference at the level of children and their families. I feel that this has given me the strength and the confidence to actually question some of the practice out there, and to actually say with much more confidence, this is how this should be done, and this is how we work in North Lanarkshire. We have a national framework that we're working to, and because we have that national framework, it is easier to make those types of conversations or discussions happen, where you're saying, if you're not doing this, then it's not in line with what we're asking practitioners in North Lanarkshire to do. So it's not easy conversations, it's not confrontational, but it's I guess it's just evolving. So thank you.